Hey Steve,
Hey Ben, how are you?
really great. Yeah, another episode, very exciting.
Yes. So with that in mind, welcome everybody to another episode of Navigating the Future. I'm Steve, and today I'll be joined by Ben, as always on these podcasts, the founder of Freshwater Futures, to talk about something many organizations struggle with, figuring out what they're going to do with AI.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. So we basically want to cut through all the noise of AI can do everything and maybe share some practical tips on how you figure out how I can use AI for my business that in a way that might actually solve a real problem I have.
Yeah. So if you've ever sat through innovation workshops that led nowhere or struggled to get leadership buy-in for your AI initiatives, then this episode is for you. We'll share the frameworks and approaches we've seen work across financial services, retail, and higher education.
Yeah, we'll basically take you through how we identify the right opportunities and problems to use AI on with the right people in the room and how to prioritize those opportunities to balance your ambition for achieving everything with what's actually possible with today's generative AI, especially in regulated environments like financial services.
So by the end of this episode, you'll have practical tools to run more effective discovery sessions, engage the skeptics in the room, and turn ideas into action plans that get the executives up and running and support and funding coming down the corridor.
Yeah, so not too theoretical this episode. There's mostly some experiences that we've had that you could probably take and use some of these tips tomorrow, whether you're just starting out or you're trying to get unstuck in your planning phase.
So let's get into it. So Ben, what's the biggest misconception organizations have when they first start ideating AI use cases?
Yeah, I think one of the big traps for new teams to AI discovery is coming up with solutions that are either really complicated or based on the latest demo they've seen from one of the big labs, instead of maybe starting with the problems they have in their own organization and the opportunities that are right in front of them instead of the shiny balls in the horizon.
Could you share some examples of when simple, AI applications delivered more value than was actually initially expected?
Yeah, so in one workshop, we came up with heaps of really complicated ideas, and one person was, could we update the frequently asked questions on our website using AI? And we were all like, well, yeah, do you want to try it? And he pumps in the prompt into a standard AI model and generated effectively a week's worth of content for their website in 5 minutes. And it was one of those, oh, there are some use cases which are so simple and so effective that you don't even need to plan a project. You can just do it. It was really good.
Almost like a light bulb goes on in the room.
Exactly.
So, given obviously you've got a lot of experience in doing the discovery workshops, so what's the best way in your experience for teams to prepare, for an AI discovery workshop to ensure that it's productive?
The secret of all facilitators and consultants who run workshops with clients is really in the preparation and how you set up the workshop for success. Getting into the calendars of the right people is really essential. So, identifying a broad group of stakeholders beyond just technology. So, you want people from operations, customer service, compliance, and that starts with your preparation, who you're inviting, when they're available, and also designing an agenda for your participants that's maybe varied across up to 4 hours. You want to stimulate interest, you want to identify opportunities, you want to have time to prioritize and narrow down all the pie in the sky to something actually valuable. And then you probably want to have some time for planning at the end. So we generally use a four-stage framework for our workshops.
And are they all day workshops?
Typically half a day for a rapid discovery process, then followed up by more deep dives for the opportunities that are identified as the top two or three.
Okay, sounds good. Something I hear that we talk about a lot as well is the problem first framework for AI ideation. What does that mean?
So, what we're trying to do here is start with what are the real pain points or the real opportunities in your business processes or your customer experiences. So, this might be as simple as we have a business process that we know is extremely expensive, extremely frustrating. There's a lot of pain in this area, and this would be an obvious place to ask the question, can modern generative AI technology have an impact on a known high value use case? So we're trying to identify genuine business problems, problem first, rather than starting with an AI capability like voice or chat, and then trying to figure out how we jam that into our existing business.
So, nice segue into my next sort of question. So, what sort of techniques do you find work in these situations for separating those nice to haves from the genuine business pain point?
Often, what we'll do, we'll ask participants to look at how often a problem happens in the organization and how many people are impacted to get a sense of the breadth of issue. And then we'll look at what's the financial risk and customer impact of that problem. And because we're focusing not at all on technology, we've got the group thinking about the actual business improvement or the business impact rather than starting with the technology and working backwards.
So, simple template, what in your experience works when it comes to those templates? There are many, many of them out there and available, but what works for you?
Yeah, I think the identification of current pain points, what the impact of that is on your business. Maybe it says it'll causes you some pain, and then the cost of that. So typically at least those three topics.
So, you're organising a cross functional discovery. Who, in your experience, needs to be in the room?
We've tried running workshops just with technology teams, and they're very technology focused and very excited about AI, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what we find the real power in is when you've got subject matter experts from operations and customer support and compliance who can provide those real world pain points in the organization, combined with people from your tech teams and maybe external support to give you the different perspectives to come up with the right opportunities for your business.
I suppose it's also a way of bringing everybody who will be involved in the project moving forward together.
Exactly. There's a sort of side agenda here that when you're doing AI workshops, you're often got a lot of people interested, but also some people who are a bit skeptical. And so I think this is your opportunity to engage some of those more skeptical departments in a process that opens their mind to the possibilities. Sometimes we call the early workshops the art of the possible, where half the battle is getting your team to consider what could be before they decide what will be.
So, given your earlier comment, you've definitely found balancing that technical expertise with business domain knowledge to be an absolute key part of the discovery workshop.
Yeah, I think the most powerful discovery teams have strong technical and strong business participation, and I've seen that time and again.
So, one of the frameworks that you use from a prioritization point of view is the 2x2 impact feasibility matrix. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that actually means?
So the classic prioritization approach is to look at least two dimensions. We sometimes add a third. The first one is how much impact this opportunity may have on our business. And that's really the lens we were talking about earlier. Where's the pain? How many customers? How many staff? How much money could we save? How much money could we make? This is the idea of impact. But then you also want to consider the feasibility. And this is where the technical team can really help provide that perspective on what opportunities are particularly well suited to generative AI and which ones are not. So this would be using that lens of, is it a fast, easy, quick win, or is it a very difficult technical achievement to do that project? And so combining those two perspectives, business and technology into a 2x2 matrix allows you to quickly see what is the high impact and highly feasible opportunities, which are obviously a good place to start.
So, part of your process is what you call moving beyond the obvious use cases and really finding that hidden value. Can you talk to me about the process and what's involved there?
So we borrow heavily from design thinking techniques and journey mapping. And what this means is doing a day in the life of the problem space. So maybe that's your customer journey, and walking through every step of the journey to find where those pain points are if they're not immediately apparent. And this can remind you to look at everything that happens before and everything that happens after a particular transaction of interest. So these mapping techniques and user experience research techniques can provide really valuable inputs to your opportunity identification and prioritization process. In fact, if you don't already have some of that research done, that's something we've done for some organizations, set up a research team to go and find some of those pain points, which could be then an input into one of these workshops.
Which then moves on to making it real. So we're moving from whiteboard to action plan. What, in your opinion, would be the next critical steps in that process?
Yeah, so once you've got ideas and you've prioritized them, what you end up coming up with is like your top three that are both considered valuable and technically feasible for the organization. Another lens to put over that is the risk lens. That would be the third dimension in prioritization, where we think about our governance approach for things like, is it ethical? Is it safe? Is it private? Is it secure? Is it costly? These kinds of lenses are for sort of final check. We've discovered things that we think we can build that are very valuable, but before we commit to the planning process, doing this risk and governance review is very common, especially in larger organizations. And once you've got that, you then need to figure out, okay, we've identified, let's say, our number one initiative across those three axes, and we want to turn that into a plan. And this varies for a lot of organizations, but you'll either put it into your existing planning process or you will do a dedicated workshop to break down that project into the key milestones. Typically, what you're coming up with is a phased approach with generative AI, where you want to start with a prototyping phase before you do an implementation phase. And we'll talk more about that in a future episode, but worth noting that the roadmap isn't one and done typically. You typically have multiple phases to get to a successful Gen AI project.
So you're moving through the process in the workshop, you're building an opportunity portfolio, so you're looking to balance those quick wins and transformative ideas. What has been your thought process when it gets to that point in the day or in part of the project?
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you'll have, like the FAQ example, very small, quick win, we can just do that tomorrow. And there are other ideas that feel like, oh, we don't even know if it's possible, but it would be amazing if it was, like a really big moonshot that if we could do this with generative AI, it would transform our business. Typically, these are like entirely new products or entirely new services that you've never done before. And you're just, maybe it's at the edge of feasibility, you're not sure, but the payoff would be huge. And what we're talking about there is just a balanced portfolio of investment where you don't want to put all your eggs in the one basket of almost impossible dreams. And equally, you don't want to play so safe that the only work you do is the tiny website copywriting or blog writing use cases. So I think you want a mix of those. And I've seen some clients opt for that kind of 70-20-10 rule where most of your work is bread and butter. It produces obvious value, but isn't super exciting. 20% is innovative and exciting, and 10% is absolutely wild, like crazy ideas that we're willing to fail as long as we learn.
So if we think about the clients that you've worked with in the past, so obviously learning from others, or I know you like to call the AI discovery success patterns. Can you give us some examples maybe from, learning from others in the previous work that you've done?
Yeah, so in terms of what we've learned for doing discovery for multiple clients is there's a common thread of combining institutional knowledge and processes with technological capability. So very commonly, once teams are familiar with the basic capability of AI to take data and transform it, what they start to see is all the places in their organization that they've got proprietary information that is valuable and they can apply it to improving customer support or internal employee experience. So we see these sort of common threads in a lot of the projects that will start by trying to leverage their knowledge for more business benefit.
And do you see as well initially that some of these discovery workshops might be slow to start, but as they go on, you really start to get some momentum.
Yeah, exactly. So the classic workshop, very bad if you've got no agenda, no facilitator, a poor sense of timing, no energy, no momentum. And so the difference between one of these really good workshops and a really poor one is get yourself a good facilitator, make sure you do that preparation we talked about, and design the experience so that we have a mix of stimulating excitement, deep thinking and reflection, and analytical planning and budgeting. So these kinds of different perspectives throughout the day, I think, give you that sense of we're moving forward, and a good facilitator is worth their weight in gold. Very much recommend, focusing on that.
So sort of like the karaoke principle then, where people go along, oh, I don't want to be here, I'm not really, I haven't got, I'm not getting involved in this, and then half an hour later, everybody's arguing it was actually my turn to go, and you've already had two goes.
Exactly. And participation is the classic win you want, getting everyone in the workshop actively writing, talking, and participating. And there are many techniques that we use for that. Some that you can think about would be making sure everyone has a pen. That's a very powerful facilitation technique. Making sure you are open to many ideas, but you balance that with techniques to converge down to your top three, typically using voting or other ranking techniques like the 2 by 2 matrix we talked about. So combining all those sort of facilitation techniques together gives you often a transformative experience where you come out feeling like you've considered many opportunities in AI and you've picked two or three that you can really put your weight behind. And if you're a senior group of stakeholders, this is, I think, the buy-in turning point where we as a group agreed that these were the three things we're going to do this year. And that can really cut through a lot of inertia because you've gone from, yeah, we could do lots of things with AI to we're going to do these three things. And that's a really amazing experience to feel that level of clarity coming out of a workshop like this.
So one of the things that we want to achieve when we do these podcasts is we want to give the audience some practical takeaways. And as we've come up with our term, the Discovery Toolkit, so resources that listeners can use tomorrow, what are we looking at there?
Yeah, so we've been building out these templates in collaboration tools like Miro that allow us to rapidly deploy one of these discovery workshops to our clients. And if you're interested in that, please just get in touch. Really happy to share those toolkits with you and those templates for, I guess, rapidly planning and executing a workshop across those four topics: stimulus in your area, ideation, prioritization, and planning.
So we've talked a lot about what to do, but let's have a little chat about what not to do in these situations.
Yeah, so to summarize, technology-led innovation and ideation is probably not the ultimate approach. So if you were initially thinking, I will start with the AI technology and then figure out how to use it, I would recommend taking a moment to think about, well, let's start with our existing known problems and opportunities and then think about where technology is appropriate to apply there. The danger is you build things because you can, they have little to no business value. The other pitfall I might think about would be coming up with great ideas and never doing anything about it. So this is a problem where you've got no momentum and you've done planning, but you haven't scheduled anything to happen after the planning. So there's this opportunity to go straight from a planning workshop into some kind of investment, even if it's small, in your top idea. So that's effectively having buy-in and support to going ahead with one of your ideas and the plan in your head that we will figure out what to do and we will do some of it straight away. Within the next month or the next quarter, we will have at least one initiative that we're working on. And I think that momentum can be so valuable for an organization.
It's a really good point, actually. I saw an article about AI adoption in the Australian market, and I was actually quite surprised to see that Australia, out of 45 countries, is, believe it or not, 45. So there certainly seems to be a lot of strategy going on in organisations, but there does seem to be that lack of, well, let's just do it. Hence the reason that we we're lagging in this country when it comes to AI adoption. There's lots on it in the press, but in actual reality, there's probably only a few of the larger organisations that are really doing more than just dipping their toe into the water. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. All talk, no action is kind of how I would summarize that. And
Yeah.
I, I'm starting to see some really leading organizations engage with us to build real projects using the very best of the generative AI stack. But we haven't really hit the critical mass yet here in Australia. There's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, and I'd have to say that would be very bad for our country and our organisations if we continue to sit on the sidelines. The amount of opportunity we might leave on the table here could be substantial.
So as we're getting ready to wrap up this podcast, how do you measure the success, of the discovery that you've ran with an organisation and the process?
Yeah, exactly. One of the interesting metrics that you might consider is not how many ideas did we have, but how much confidence does the team have in the ideas they've created. And so I've often used a confidence score with discovery teams to get a sense of how feasible, how valuable, how risky are the ideas we are generating, and tracking that over time. So we've got a sense of improving confidence. So at the beginning of a discovery process, you would expect to have very low confidence in your opportunities because you don't really know if they're going to work. And by the end of it, you want your team to be much more confident. So maybe we go from 2 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 in the process of a 3-month discovery program. So that's a good way to measure, I think.
And finally, what advice would you give to someone who's working in an organisation today that's responsible for leading the AI discovery, specifically in a risk-averse organisation?
Yeah, I've worked in some heavily regulated industries, and often the first thing that is needed is permission giving. I am allowing you to explore the topic in a safe way by providing a safe place to explore. I'm going to give you the right support that you need to get going. Maybe that's external stimulus, organisations like us and others who can come in and get you started. Again, good facilitators to again help you get through the inertia of having not done anything yet. And it's almost just going from 0 to 1, from not having done anything to at least started is a huge unlock, and we can definitely help with that.
That's fantastic. Well, all that remains for me to say as we get to the end of this is thanks for everybody for tuning in. We do have a couple of special guests coming on in the next couple of podcasts, and we'll let you guys know more about that once we get that finalised. I hope today has given you more of an insight into that discovery phase as you're looking to bring AI into your business and what you're looking to do with it. Ben, I'd like to thank you for hanging out with me for the last half hour or so and answering all of my questions.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That was really great, and very much looking forward to our super special guests coming up on the show.
Yeah, very excited about the super special guest. So everybody have a great week, and we will see you in the next podcast. Bye for now.
Bye for now.